So,
I thought you were
my
on vacation.
it's a minute or two after 5. As you know, Nick's not gonna be here today, so we asked me to share. And I don't know about Vikram and somebody else, Vikram's here. So we have one more than a quorum, and our philosophy always is the way to get meetings started on time is to start on time, so. We always start with the minutes. And, I looked them over, I looked pretty good to me. Does anybody have any comments about the minutes from the June 18th meeting? Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved. Second.
And unless I hear an objection, somebody voting no, I'll dispense with the normally mandatory poll. Is there anyone object? Then it's unanimous, the minutes are adopted. I also, on my participants, I don't see any members of the general public. Am I right looking this correctly? Is we normally have public comment, but are any members of the public here?
No, so we currently have no members of the public in person and no members of the public on Zoom.
So what we've been working on for a long time and hasn't been our focus. First of all, did we announce formally that Michael Rubenstein is our liaison from the select board?
Yeah, I think Nick sent an email.
Nick sent it.
Yeah.
But not at the meeting.
Not at the
You can record it in the minutes.
The real point is to welcome you.
Yeah, welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
You certainly, felt for years that, one of the most important things in terms of the climate agenda, because it often is new things, that it's not like fixing potholes that town's been doing for the last 100 years. It's often new ideas and so on. If they're kind of having that good engagement, good action, the select board is really important. So, so thank you very much for being here and being able to do it. So, thank you. So as I started to say, what was really focusing on a lot recently is these 4 sample priority initiatives that and I think the plan is between this meeting and the next meeting, which I think is the 23rd, try to sort of nail down all 4 of these so that we can pass them along to either boost people to make it compliant.
Well, so do you mind if I interject for just a second? Hi everybody, I'm Sandra Becchio, Director of Sustainability and Natural Resources. So I did want to just make sure that we were all on the same page on this. I know this has been a lot of work, and the idea is with all these initiatives that it'll be ongoing input and a living document that continues to be modified by ZIAB. I want to make sure I understand what exactly we want to hand to Blue Stripe as input into the plan. So we prepared narrative documents with the goal of using those to complete the prioritization framework, which we started with Berto at our last meeting. And so is the intention that the app will hand over both the narrative and the prioritization framework for the initiatives that you choose. And in that case, are those initiatives, last meeting, I know we discussed new construction, Berto, and municipal solar. I think the other one that we have done some work on is residential solar as well. So I just wanted to clarify, are we doing 3 of those? Are we doing all 4 of those? Are we doing something else otherwise? So just so that I can know and prepare them.
Yeah, I'm looking over the minutes. There's a little bit of ambiguity that there we said we were formally, explicitly that new construction, Berto, and residential would like to be passed on, and municipal wasn't quite so clear. But I guess my sense is I mean, let me say too, in terms of background, I think, don't we all agree that this is quite preliminary, that they're not, they're going to try to make the formats look a little bit alike, but they're, right now, they're quite different. I mean, for instance, the new construction thing that Nick has been taking a lead on, it's a very long document, and the municipal solar is a shorter document, partly with different kinds of initiatives, but it's almost a given that these are quite preliminary, as you said, that they're going to be a work in progress. And that my sense is that we've been talking about getting these into the hoppers and we're getting them to Blue Strike, partly so they can give us feedback, because they've not experienced it in the communities the same. And that therefore we would do 4 out of the 3, even if we think 1 or 2 are in perfect shape now.
Yeah, but my understanding was that I think municipal, Ardell, and new construction are the higher priority. 2 weeks ago, we talked briefly about residential solar. Given what's happening with the tax credits in the current bill, residential solar has become less attractive for homeowners, at least for this year. And let's see what happens to the market next year, or to the industry, I should say. So yeah, we pulled back a little bit on the residential for that reason. And municipal, we have maybe 18 months, 12 months. If Trump signs it, let's say on Sunday, we'll have about a year to start our projects.
Well, Kathleen, what are your thoughts, since you've been sort of doing more of that than Davis?
I agree with Vikram. I feel like just in the last couple of days, especially, I'm like, this would be a very hard sell to residents right now who are following the news. Because they just feel like, it would feel like a missed opportunity that they're overpaying for something that months ago they could have gotten much less expensive. So maybe they would just wait it out. I don't know. What you're
The tax credit runs out at the end of the year. But what it means is the systems have to be installed and permission to operate, which means the utilities have to agree that the system is operational. So most likely the system has to be installed by, this is my guess, I call it end of October. So installers are pretty much, solar companies are pricing higher, they are basically sold out for they just cannot install anymore. So by next year, let's see what happens to the industry. My gut feeling is that about 20, 30, 40, 50% of the solar installation companies may be doing our business. So,
Can I ask a question? This is Patty. Vikram, I haven't been following this as closely as you, but I thought the Senate version and how I just looked at the Times headlines. They haven't done anything today, I guess. But I thought the Senate was that there was some kind of longer window, like 5 or 6 years if you sign a contract or something there. Maybe that was just on the commercial side. I'm not sure.
side, it's any project that begins construction within 12 months of bill signing will qualify for the full ITC. And there is no place in service by date. Originally, the version of the bill 3 days ago included December 31st, 2027 as the place in service by date. So they've removed that.
Okay, so for residential, okay. So they said it is a shorter window
It's a shorter window and
for residential. Okay,
the bill has been changing literally every 18 to 24 hours. My understanding is that now there is only 1 year's worth of runway.
okay,
There initially, one of the versions last week had a sliding scale that this year, project starting in 2025 would get full 30%, next year 20%,
mm-hmm.
and the year after 10%, and then 0. So I think that, and basically put 12-month.
For residential. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Let's see what happens.
So the only thing that that all sounds good and well, that's not good, it actually sounds awful, but, the process that you're discussing makes sense. I do just want to clarify that while, yeah, has the narratives that they've been working on, the prioritization framework, and it would be, nice to have those components for whatever initiatives that we see as priorities for input into the climate action plan. That doesn't mean that residential solar, for example, or residential EV charging, or public EV charging are not going to be goals in the climate action plan. So if there is something that you feel on those content areas should still be passed along to Blue Strike, even if it isn't the full package of materials from the narrative and the framework, I still think that's worth sharing, because there are going to be those goals in the plan. I suspect. So I think if you have information that you want them to have or think about or include, then we need all of that after our next meeting. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to agree with that. I mean, I also think one of the things that's a little weird here is we're both thinking substantively. We're trying to make maybe just 3 of these something of priorities substantively to really be working on, but we're also trying to design the plan and give them to Blue Strike for that reason. And it strikes me that residential solar, nothing else is a little different from these others. It's something that's really focused on convincing people in the community. So, and not only that, but there's a lot of things in the building, the new construction thing that, that for instance, we don't want to lose track of Patty. We won't lose track of the fact that the appendix, there's some things Patty suggested, for instance, embodied carbon. I mean, so in a way, the new construction thing is really going to be, may end up being several different.
I think it will. Yeah, right.
So, so I guess what I'm thinking is, we are now reaching the point, as you just said, where we have to get the stuff to Blue Strike, and I don't see any problem with basically figuring out today and next week, next meeting, what more work can we do to improve these, but whatever stage we're at, but basically we may not do anything more residential solar because of all the things you just said, but still give it to them.
Yeah.
So that they're aware that that's something we don't work on. And again, I don't know quite what they're going to do with it.
I think it is content that's going to help feed the goals, and certainly I think the piece that's going to be most helpful is the prioritization framework. Because if that is the system that works well for us prioritizing and quantifying how we prioritized our initiatives, then that's something that we would be able to apply across the board. However, the narrative content is something that is going to be just almost further input into the plan of ZIAB as a body has really talked about, done a lot of research on these things, find these things to be high priority and important. We want to make sure that that's reflected in the plan. Here's content, and distill that as you will, just like you have what you heard at Public Forum 1 and 2 and in the survey and in the interview. It's just like another pathway of input.
Can I interject for a sec? Patty?
Sorry.
Is it okay if I jump in? Okay, I guess the answer is yes. I'm having trouble hearing. I'm just wondering how we can be most productive. I mean, I was finding when I was working on what's now in the appendix to the new construction document and trying to apply the framework, there were a lot of questions I had that I wasn't able to answer in the time I had and with the resources I had. And I'm wondering if Blue Strike is going to run into that also, if we kind of turn over what we have, which, it's July, so maybe we do that, as Werner said. But I'm just wondering if what we can help with is collecting some of, I wonder if Blue Strike if we can be helpful in collecting some of the data, interviewing, some other municipalities about staff resources, time, just kind of, I don't know. So I just wanted to throw out that idea to everyone as some way that maybe we can be helpful. Because it's hard running through, I didn't find I had enough information when I was trying to apply the framework.
This will do the meeting pretty soon too, so maybe that's the way to address that, is to have, this is sort of engage with them about if there's other ways we can help.
Yeah, so I think there's two phases. So the input on the content itself, when they're coming back to us in August, that's going to be the first very preliminary pass at a draft strategies and draft goals. And so anything that we want as input into those draft strategies and goals, that's what we want to focus on right now. Then I think there's a second piece of, as we're actually going through the drafting of the plan and thinking about implementation, I can ask that question of them of if there are additional research on what I'm going to call the implementation side of things that they would like the app to focus on. But and maybe, but I think right now that the focus should be on the content itself. But I do think that Patty did bring up a point that I was a little bit nervous about, which was ultimately all of this is and this is my summary of it, is to help us determine how are we going to prioritize these actions. We want an actionable plan. We want a plan that's measurable. We don't want a laundry list of everybody's hopes and dreams and, loves of the world. So that's really the piece that I think we need to focus on. And if we feel like we don't have enough, hearing Patty say, like, I don't feel like we have the right things in the document to be able to apply to that prioritization framework, that makes me a little nervous, because that is the most important piece, because that's what we're trying to apply across everything. So I think we started it with Berto, with Alan, and we said, okay, we actually need to apply this to other initiatives to see how well the prioritization framework works. So I think that's the question that we need to think about now is, are we using that?
A couple of thoughts. First of all, before I get to that, I want to go back to the residential solar, okay? Because the CARB is what, 10-year time frame or something. We're talking about this like it's a 2-year time frame or a 3-month time frame. Right now, whatever's going on in Congress, you turn on CNN and you turn on an hour later and something's changed. Okay. Well, something could change after the next election as well. And, we talk about getting all of the right numbers for Blue Strike. I mean, I've said this in previous meetings, I've done the best job I can to put some numbers together for Berto, okay? And Rebecca knows, because I send you new versions every couple of days and she updates what's posted. But all of these things are approximations. In fact, the municipal solar is probably the best one, because we have some real concrete things. And I think as it applies to the residential solar, we know we're going to want residential solar. I mean, I think it's just common sense that it should be in there. And maybe what we do is we can put it in, do a couple of scenarios, say, before they change it, here's what it would have been, here's what it's going to be, get it so the basic information is in there. And then to address, what Patty just said, I know in Berto, I put actually there was one place where I didn't put in numbers, and that was the under how much money it would cost per town staff for the full version of Berto, because who knows, that could really be an enormous thing. And I put in my best estimate of various things, but my expectation has been that what we're doing here is based on what we know now. We're analyzing these things, we're putting together scores and what we know now. I don't think anything we have on the list sounds silly, okay? I know in past climate action plans, and we literally were with 136 actions in the first one. That's the truth. Can
I jump in?
So I think that the way I've been viewing this is we're trying to give Blue Strike input. They have background from doing it in other places. We're gonna put it in, and what it's gonna do is have these 4 or 5 or 6 things that people say, these are important, we need to work on them, and then we're gonna get more people working on them to flesh them out and figure out where we go. I mean,
Can I jump in? Sorry, I had my hand raised for a while. So I mean, Berta was relatively straightforward because Alan and I had access to our counterparts on the Newton Energy, whatever, I can't remember the full name. And they were intrinsically involved and they had all the data. We had a perfect comparable. We know exactly how many staff they budgeted. You know, it was way more straightforward. When we get into, I think we basically agreed that return on investment, ROI, is a pretty significant factor. And so when you talk about that, you're talking about budget, you're talking about staff, you're talking about, you know, all of that stuff. And what I think we have on the agenda next, you know, to go through each initiative, maybe what we should be doing as we go through each one is just say, you know, what questions do we have to be able to answer, you know, to be able to apply the,
Let me
you
pick
know,
up,
to just kind of like eyeball it and kind of get like a straw poll of whether, you know, we're in a position to apply the framework.
Well, to kind of answer that for residential solar, I'm looking at the document we have posted, and we don't have any of the baseline data in here. So the baseline data would be total solar installations in Brookline, percentage of homes with solar installations, total community solar subscriptions in Brookline, and percentage of residential units with community solar subscriptions. And then presumably we'd be setting targets around those data points. So we don't have any of that. I don't know if Blue Strike could help flush that out or if it's worth it at this point. But I don't know how we apply the framework to say that this is a significant, you know, measure, you know, to emphasize. I don't know how we prioritize it because we don't really know yet.
Yeah, I think so. And this is my concern, I think, for the prioritization, for it to be consistent, we need to have a similar level of baseline information that we're using as inputs to the prioritization framework for every initiative. And while we, you know, Blue Strike and staff can help fill in some of those gaps, we're not going to be able to do that for every single one consistently. So I think we need to make sure that the framework is something that can be used with a very simple and preliminary set of inputs. So data in is something that we can gather data in for all strategies and goals in the plan. And what comes out of that is a fairly consistent prioritization.
Is this kind of like what you and Wendy did last summer? Like, yeah, it was like a very simplified version of this.
Which I think Nick was trying to elevate it a little bit with this. So that's the question. I do also just want to acknowledge that I think Michael's had his hand up for a bit.
I just want to make sure that I understand sort of how all of these pieces fit together, because people who are not you are going to need to understand that. So in terms of the initiatives that ZIAB is not talking about, you know, you said, you know, there are lots of other places you're getting initiatives from, the community forums, et cetera. Is Blue Sky and staff then effectively going to be plugging those into the prioritization framework so that those come out with prioritization scores alongside the ZIAB ones?
That's the plan, yes. That's why I think that's why I'm emphasizing that the prioritization framework needs to be something that can be applied to everything.
Right. And so if some of those, you know, some of those might be silly or outlandish or far out, I presume. And so applying those to the framework might be sort of more challenging or more interesting, or get you at least, I'll use this word, political cover for the initiatives that you are taking on. You say, well, we thought about these other 7 things, but then we applied them to the framework, and it turns out they're value was 0 or
That's
1.
exactly right. We're trying to narrow our focus
Right,
to
right.
what we can work on and what we can't, because everybody's got
Right.
different.
But in order to do that, you actually have to run all of those items as well through the framework to back up your prioritizations.
And that's where, it seems to me when I was in, you just said important about framework right now is pretty complicated. At least
Yeah.
I look kind of go, whoa. But that maybe it needs to almost be tiered in a way so that you say, well, these 3, 4, 5 variables or something,
Right.
we can plug something in for everything, no matter how crazy it is, even for 100 of them, you can plug in something. And then
stage
here's
2
the
of
things that get more precise. And we can get down to trying to decide, we know we're going to do these top 2, but do we do municipal solar or residential solar? Well, then you try to look at it more precisely and at a deeper level.
But we have some good, call it educated inputs, for a lot of these, projects, initiatives to be able to say, yes, can we now use those educated inputs and apply the prioritization framework?
And do we have those educated inputs for all the other things that are now?
So, I think our goal was we picked a few that we believe were the high impact
Right,
ones.
Yeah.
That's where we ended up spending more of our time.
right.
And then Blue Strike, the assumption was Blue Strike and would do the rest. Right?
So
Sure, let's throw it over the wall and then just sort of make sure, I just want to make sure it gets picked up.
Yeah, no,
Right.
but they are if you think about it, we hired an expert
Yeah.
who has done this kind of building these kind of plans for multiple other towns, who
Right.
have multiple years of experience. So
Yep.
here was that
That
should
they
have
could.
even more
I
expertise.
just want, I've said this quite a few times, okay? We're talking about, we have the framework, we have a spreadsheet, so that's great. That means you can put numbers in and it multiplies and divides and does things. And if you go up to the little thing with decimal points, you can make it out to 79 decimal places, okay? Except in some of these things, I think municipal solar, you can probably do a pretty good job. And I've got lots of numbers in my spreadsheets and I have lots of estimates, but when it comes down to the quality of those things, some of them are better than others. And I think we have to recognize that what we have here will be varying degrees of quality between initiatives. And what we're trying to do is just.
I guess the
Well,
logic,
Can I interject?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Get back to the agenda for a minute.
Okay.
Maybe we should talk about prioritization. That's on the agenda, but before that, we spent a good bit of time on solar. Let's sort of try to resolve that. It seems to me that I have a sense that we now feel as though at least the narrative should go to Blue Skies, right? And maybe the question becomes, do we do more work on it or not? My personal sense is that what you just read there, we already identified the things that we would need to dig into more deeply. I don't know that digging into them more deeply right now is good enough. I mean, if you or someone else wants to do that in the next 2-3 weeks, that would be helpful, right? But I don't know that it's critical. My feeling is that we ought to just agree right now that we're going to get the solar thing. That's one of the things we're going to send to them. And sort of leave up in the air whether we do any more work on it. But if you don't want to do any more work, that doesn't see how many times
You
you're
should look into it. I think Alan made a really good point. I think I overlooked. This is not a 2-year. This is a longer term. And I think that we should keep that in mind.
All right, so
And
does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe we add a bullet point what's happening currently. But like in 8 years, if we look back, like why did we not pursue solar? At least it's in there and captured
Well,
what was
there are
happening at the
things
time.
like obstacles and stuff. The amount of number of obstacles that could come up in the next 2 weeks, 6 weeks or 6 years. Okay, so I think we're ready to go on that. And since you've taken it, if you feel like you want to add something like that, we can do that offline.
We could work on that.
Yeah.
together. Okay.
So then, it seems to me, again, look at the agenda. New construction is a big thing. Nick isn't here, and since he knows more about that, I don't think we're going to really talk about that much today. My question becomes therefore whether the idea is to try to make some progress in this meeting, the next meeting, so at the end of the next meeting, we kind of know what we're shipping on.
Can I interject?
Excuse me?
Can I interject? I was trying to pop into the last, with the thing on the screen. I'm sorry, Rebecca, can I speak to what was on the screen?
No, wait a
And
minute,
speak-
let me just make sure, let's talk about the agenda for a second here. What I was gonna suggest is that, so if we've done a lot of work on Verno, I don't know if that's what we're gonna talk about, we just now talked about residential solar, we're not going to do new construction now, because Nick's not here, and then we talk about the prioritization framework, which is basically what you had up there, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's what you're suggesting, Patty, right? Can we talk?
Well, yeah, I wanted to interject in what was being said about something on the screen. Um, So I just wanted to point out, I can't remember who said it, but someone said, that we hired this expert and, the person's done it before, Blue Strike's done this before. And I just wanted to point out, and I know this is true of some of those new construction things, as we go through them, we should be thinking about the specifics. But for example, ease of implementation, the second item down, that's very heavily weighted. And one thing we had the ability to do with Birdo is know the specifics of what exactly the budget was, what exactly the staff needs were, because we had a comparable. And so when I was working on the new construction stuff that's in the appendix, I was thinking about that, like, could this initiative be plugged into the design review? That's already happening and, in certain kinds of zoning decisions with planning staff, for example, or, is this a new process? I mean, and so all I could do was just raise questions. I don't know that Blue Strike is going to know the specifics of the comparables in other communities of some of these initiatives and what the budget required and what the staffing required is without a kind of more specific research. So that's kind of what I just wanted to point out as we go through, the various things.
So let me ask a question, even having looked at all these things, we got a lot of documents really. Is Birdo the only one right now that we have applied the framework?
Yes.
So again, maybe help me, Alexander, here again, the prioritization framework is on the agenda. What did you have in mind there? Do we need to refine it some more, or do we at this point really just need to talk about applying it to these other things?
Yeah, so here's my concern. The prioritization framework, we need to be able to consistently prioritize the initiatives that go into the plan. If we are using the prioritization framework, I think we need to make sure that it can apply across the board to all the initiatives in the plan. Right now, I'm not confident we can do that. Thus far, we as a body, you as a body, have only applied it to Birdo.
And even there, we didn't debate it.
Yes. And we said, I think we need to look at it compared to other initiatives as well. So what I think needs to happen is we need to try to apply the framework to another initiative and see if the framework holds true and still works. If not, I think ZIAB needs to discuss what is how are we prioritizing these initiatives? And if it is not this method that's up on the screen right now, because that doesn't work for X, Y, or Z reason, then we need to come up with another one. That is the most important piece of feedback that you can give at this point into the plan.
I understand your challenge or concern about this, but last year we actually did this. We used this framework. We took all the 113 initiatives that were identified in the past climate plan and applied this framework to come up with a prioritization sheet, prioritization list. Was it perfect? Is it 100% perfect? No. Is it a level of, with a, call it 70, 80, 90%, I don't know what percentage confidence level? Yes, we would be very confident to say, yes, I think if this framework can be applied. In life, we all deal with imperfect information, right? Whether it's business, government, any kind of, I've been involved in doing these kind of exercises for 3 decades now. And I don't see this being a challenge, I think it may not be exactly perfect. It may not be, as Alan said, an algorithm that spits out numbers, but I think if we went through the different initiatives.
Could you
Well,
talk a little bit about the work process that you used last year?
That was my question.
Yeah, so I think what we did was as I said, you have to make educated inputs. In some cases, you have better information. In some cases, you have less than perfect information. So you make educated guesses in that situation to say, hey, these are the inputs that we need to know about every single one of these projects, right? So every initiative, what we did was we said, okay, let's take a stab at ease of initial financing. What do we believe is the situation for this particular initiative?
And they are mostly high, medium, low. They don't pretend to be precise.
We don't pretend to be precise. Yeah. I think we went for 4 levels. It was unknown and then high, medium, low. And based on that, we were able to come up with a prioritization matrix. Again, I've seen this.
Did you discuss it as a group?
Yeah, we discussed
Yeah,
this.
because what I was gonna say, just one last thing. At our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, you asked a question about something that was in here, okay? You said, how did these two things compare? And I thought about that later, all right, because I hadn't thought about it that way. And that was one of the changes I made to the new version. I'm not gonna go through the numbers, but my point is, you raised a question that I hadn't thought about. And that made me go back and look. So by the collaboration, I believe is necessary. And it's not a perfect product, but it makes an improved product.
It's an improved product.
But also, I think I'm remembering the way we did this, and I think the way we should do it too, is we can't, whether we have 20 activities or 50 or 100 or whatever, even if it's only 20, you can't sit in a meeting like this and do this. It's just
Correct.
impossible. So somebody's gonna have to do it, and I think that's what we did. Somebody goes and does it, and it's a kind of this is sort of, it's this weird process too, where it may be that once somebody, maybe different people have done different parts or whatever, once you have a final document, part of what we think we ended up doing too is we sort of looked at it and went, wait a minute, why did this thing come out so low?
Yeah.
That just feels like it's important. And why did this one come out so high? And then we discussed those. We didn't discuss that many of them really. We go, oh, that looks reasonable, that we don't know. And that kind of a process, again, it was not precise, but it was very, it educated us.
Yeah.
And also in terms of sort of politics, it makes it sort of defensible. It goes, well, yeah, we're willing to discuss this with anybody. If somebody says, why is that so low? Well, we either talked about it, we can explain why we wanted it so low, or you know, oh yeah, I know we didn't talk about that. We should talk about that because it's a working document. It's not going to be frozen if new information comes up. We have an election happens, things change with residential solar. We plug in all different numbers.
But the other advantage of the process that you described is that not only can you go back to an item and say, well, yes, maybe we should talk about it, but you can also go back to an item and say, oh, well, it turns out for that item that item is impossible to finance. So that's why it dropped. You know, the process itself gives you a body of information that you can share with people as they need.
Does that help you at all?
Go ahead.
So it seems like we went through, I mean, we had weekly meetings. I don't think you guys understand how much time we devoted to this. And I have 2 questions. So how different is this framework from the one that you and Wendy
Very
used?
similar.
Very similar.
Very close.
So it feels like some of that work's already done. And if we want to simplify it, could we somehow merge those 2 together? Because what I'm noticing from what Werner just said, we were able to have conversations together. And I'm afraid that if we are just working on prioritizing things, we're never going to get to the conversation about, you know,
There is.
anomalies or things that seem, you know, they should be a no-brainer and they're not. The analysis.
Yes, sorry.
Can I interject? Can I interject? So I guess we're going to, I mean, I don't know if we made a decision on residential solar. I think it was to put it aside for now. Was that the,
We're going to do it. We're going to include it.
okay. And, okay.
Vikram and I are going to do a little bit more work on the numbers and we're going to include it.
Okay. And
Longer- it's a longer
with running it through the prioritization framework?
Excuse me?
That was a question for Kathleen. You're gonna include it, running it through a proposed application of the prioritization framework, or you don't feel like you can?
We'll try and get some numbers in there that can make it at the same level.
Okay, so we decided today, I think we have other things on the agenda that's watching the clock. We're gonna not do new construction because Nick isn't here. The other thing was municipal solar, which I think there were some questions, just looking at the minutes, there were some questions. I mean, I wonder if we should just try. We had some,
Discussion about the polarization and your concerns about it, Alexander, right?
Yeah.
Did anything that we say change your thinking about it? or-
No, so that was helpful. And I know that you all went through that process, but the question that you asked, Kathleen, was the one floating around in my mind. How different or how much more complicated was this prioritization framework than the work that you all did last time? So I think what we did months ago when we started this and Nick introduced the prioritization framework was we went and we looked at collectively, you all looked at the weights for each of the different prioritization factors. The ease of financing, ease of implementation, climate impact, those kind of things. You gave those different weights. And then you also looked at the multipliers, direct versus indirect impact, equity, public visibility, and community support, and also added multipliers to those. So if I'm hearing that that is similar to the other framework that was utilized, I think what would be helpful at this point is and how you get here, I'll leave up to you, but are those numbers that are currently in this on the weights and multipliers column still, you kind of tossed those out and said, let's sit with that and see how it works once we go through some initiatives. Are those the right numbers? And if not, we need to determine how those become the right numbers in the next several weeks.
Yes, so I'll add a couple other process pieces. Again, as I mentioned, I've done this kind of planning multiple decades now. Worked with some of the biggest strategy consulting firms on doing something like this for all size of organizations, from tiny to multi-billion dollars. So typically, as we have heard this saying, right, that plans, once they're done, are pretty much useless.
Pretty much, right?
Pretty much useless. Planning is what counts. Plans are less useful. And the reason why it is said that is plans should be living, breathing documents. They should never be thought about as written in stone. Because there are always, in all kinds of businesses, any organizations, any situation, there are so many unknowns. What I've found, like all the experience that I've had, is if you try to make these kind of things very precise, you actually add to the margin of error. You end up making things worse by trying to make it more precise.
False precision.
Right? So the way to think about planning is, the process is very important. I think we're going through this. We should think about revisiting this every year. We will learn new things. Thanks to you, Alan, as you just reminded us. These are not 1 or 2 year plans. These are long-term plans. Things will change. Things will evolve. We should be revisiting. So when you start applying these kind of methodologies to call it 50 different initiatives that we in the community and Blue Strikes have identified, it's an iterative process. It's not like we would say, this is final, go and apply it, and then don't touch it. We will apply it. We will look at it as we did last time. Smell test. Does it look right? Does it feel like right? So you go back, you review, you look at it again and make some modifications to the weighting, to the multipliers. Again, it's very hard to know, is this the right multiplier or is that the right weighting? That is how the process typically ends up working. Let's not try to make it so precise that it becomes completely.
So it looks like there are basically 5 values at the top, and then for the multipliers, there's like 1, 2, or 3, or 4 values, right? That against three, so there are three, so there are three values. So you have basically an 8 by however many possibilities, 50, 100, 113. You've got a table to fill in, and once you fill in that table, then you apply this framework and you get a column of numbers, right? And then you sort based on the numbers.
Right.
That's basically the process.
That's one problem. Then you start iterating on it. As Warner reminded us, we started looking at it and saying, is this the right? Do we think this algorithm is telling us the right, at least
Right,
direction?
in which case you be adding more factors, right?
Yeah, then you start adjusting. Then we started basically narrowing our focus on the top 20, top 30, and not the top 130.
Because that's another thing, you say doing it every year makes sense, but you don't necessarily do the same level of
Correct.
depth every year. Every year you look at the whole thing, but you say, well, let's spend an hour on this one. And we may not get to those at the bottom because they haven't.
And the reality is, even in 2 years, we have barely been able to execute on 2 initiatives, let alone 100. So yes, you can prioritize a whole bunch of things, but I think my hope coming out of this is we have 3 initiatives that we pick and say, let's go and do this. Right? Let's get these things done because we have very limited resources, right? Limited time, limited resources. So let's get these things done. And as these things get done, the next ones start coming up to the next level of prioritization.
So to answer your last question, I think, Alexander, was how satisfied are we with these numbers? And again, we've looked at these several different times. We jiggered with a couple of them. And we were jiggering because we had, we have no idea what drug should be. We'll make it this. I don't think we need to vote, but I would like to suggest that might be a consensus that yes, we cover those numbers and move on to discussing something else.
That's fine. The only, I really don't want to delay this, but the only thing that I heard Vikram say was that he felt that going through with the initiatives itself was what helped us determine the weights and the multipliers. So my suggestion was going to be, can we try to take a pass at using this framework for residential solar,
Yes,
for
yeah.
municipal solar, like right now? Like, can we
We need to get more numbers for residential solar.
You want to do
We
it?
can't do that right now.
Spend the next 15 minutes doing that?
well, I think that
I'm not.
Actually, let's give this as a homework to come back in 2 weeks, to come back and say, let's. each of these.
I have a question. When you say you have to get those numbers, will getting those numbers change the 8 values that we generated for residential solar based on those?
Couple of those,
A couple of them
a
would.
couple of them were, most of them were not.
And do you think that you could make an initial estimate in 15 minutes
So let me give you an example.
without
Climate
the?
impact is one that could change. So let's say if our data suggested that 20% of Brookline homes already have residential solar installed,
Right,
right? And our target is now 40%. Climate impact is X. Versus we say we have 5% of homes with solar right now, and our target is 50%. Climate impact is going to be,
so it might move from medium to high.
right, yeah. So that's the,
Fair enough, but I think what you're saying is that we should start building out that table of 8 by however many initiatives and just put residential solar there and just fill in the 8 numbers. And
Yeah.
if that takes 15 minutes and then move on to the next one.
And also
That would
when
be the
you
most
have,
helpful thing from your perspective to validate the numbers.
and Michael, just, you may know this or not, but in each initiative, we have 3 scenarios, all right? One is a high impact scenario, a medium impact, and a low impact. So when you just talked about 2 different scenarios for solar panels. Okay, one of those would be a higher impact than the other because one is much more greenhouse.
But it might also be a higher cost
Yeah,
and therefore you might trade it off.
yeah, but what I'm saying is scenarios like that are to some extent built into the process because we've said we're gonna look at 3 different scenarios.
Yeah.
It gives you,
Right.
Yeah.
Right, that would be 3 different.
So we don't have to do it live in the meeting. I just think that, again, if the framework is going to be applied to every action that's coming through the plan, then we just want to make sure that it is a framework that can be applied to every action. And the only way we'll know that is to apply it. And while I appreciate and understand that Berto has a lot of information because of all the great research that Alan and Patty and others did, I want to make sure that we aren't setting the framework up to require a great deal of research that isn't going to be obtainable for 25 different goals. So all I'm trying to say is let's make sure that this can work with a fairly limited, a high level amount of information. And if it can't, let's tweak it so that it can work.
I think the
So
way you're gonna.
are you two willing to
Yeah.
do that?
We'll do the, for residential, we can do it for municipal, those two at least.
Or maybe you'd rather do it for municipal since it's more staff oriented, but,
No, we
or,
we can apply consistent
And
methodology.
I think what you might find is in doing that, that may also give us some insights about whether the weights we have are the appropriate weights as we start to go and with the various categories. Because I know when I went through for Berto, some of those things I said, I had to figure out how they applied, and I tried to apply them. And different things, you know, we've got a lot of different types of projects here.
well, yeah, I mean, if you're willing to do that for the next meeting, that would be a big step forward, right?
Yep, let's do that. We'll make that as our deliverable for the 23rd is our next.
Yes. Yeah, so our next meeting is the 23rd, and we should really be trying to finalize anything at that point that we want to, at least a very
Yeah.
solid first draft that we want to give to Blue Stripe, just for us to stay on time with the project overall. So
Yeah, I mean,
we
I
have
would
the meeting
say-
at the 23rd.
I would say, I know you're being real careful, I said, I would say that it ought to be a final first draft, you know,
Yeah.
not be perfect,
I would
we
love
know
that.
it's not gonna be perfect, it's something that will be good enough that we can pass it on to district.
And let's have Blue Strike attend the meeting so we can explain.
Well, that may happen later, right?
No, we can at least we'll have some debate. They could at least be learning from our discussion, right?
Yeah,
somebody-
they may not be able to attend the meeting. They're only budgeted to attend so many of our public meetings, and I don't know about their availability, but I can send them the recording. So.
See, yeah, oh yeah, that's that.
When you say apply the framework, where is the document that you guys did it for Berto to look at the template?
Well,
Or
there's.
will you send it to me, Ellen?
Well, there's two, well, I can send it, everything, the summary things were posted, there are two things.
Oh, it's the
One-
one-
It's a big spreadsheet.
Well,
right?
Share that.
one is the big spreadsheet that we've been looking at
Right,
here.
yeah, I've got
Okay,
that.
and then the other one is a Word
Oh, I see
document, which is the latest version, because
The Berto proposal 250627.
No, that's a PDF. So
well, I sent it as.
No, I know.
But it's in there as PDF, but.
So what you need, Kathleen, is this spreadsheet that live has all the formulas in it, so
Yeah.
that as you populate
Right.
the information, it will update with the scores that was done here. So this has been in a Google slide, or excuse me, a Google spreadsheet as it kept changing so that multiple people could edit it at once. So we'll make sure that you have that and then just ask that it be downloaded as a Excel and then shared with our staff no later than the 21st, so it can be posted with the meeting material.
Okay.
Okay, and Michael, the latest narrative on Berto is, it's in the meeting package, and it's 250627.
Got it. Yeah, I see.
Patty.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say that I have some windows of time through July 18th, if anybody needs help.
No, she just.
Or just if anybody's trying to track down something to help.
Patty, could you repeat that?
Yes. Pardon me?
We didn't hear you, so could you repeat that, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just saying that if Kathleen or Nick or Alexandra or Vikram, would like some support, tracking down things, to be able to make assessments, I have some time before July, through July 18th.
Nice.
Oh,
Thank you.
great. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Thank you very much, man.
Okay.
Um,
So-
I have just a question. Do you have a list of like the 25 or so, whatever that number is, of initiatives that need to actually get run through this?
Not yet, but we very will soon. That's kind of the next piece that we're gonna talk about here, but not yet is the answer. I mean, we have a lot of options, including from the work that Ziad did last year. So really, it's about narrowing down those options.
Who's gonna fill out, okay, in this case, we put together some proposals and we're putting numbers in the spreadsheet. Okay. Who's doing that for the other, whatever, 2025?
Blue Strike and myself, which is why I want to make sure that we can do it for everything without having an extensive research paper for each one, because we're about to move pretty quickly.
Mhm.
This is
Would you like any help?
the next initiative. I mean,
Us to attend?
I'll let you know. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll let you know. But I think the important thing again is that the prioritization framework is our defense. Not to put too fine of a point on it, but when we go before the select board and talk about the work that we are trying to achieve here and the dollars that we're going to need to achieve it, we need to have a very clear process and an explanation as to how we got to where we did. And so this it will be important for that reason.
Okay, and when you say the dollars we need to achieve it, there's dollars that's required for town staff, there's dollars that's required for consultants, and there's dollars that's required from, say, homeowners to do things. Are you talking about all of those, or?
I'm talking about dollars that we're requesting from the town to implement the plan.
Okay,
Because the select board is, Michael can speak to this better, but likely going to look at the plan and say, this looks like it's gonna be really expensive. You're asking us to support a plan that's gonna increase, that's gonna cause another override or gonna cause, an increase in the CIP or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
How are we prioritizing? How are we justifying? How are you implementing?
okay, I thought that's what you meant, I wanted to be sure.
Right, and the other factor, and I was looking at the framework and I think it's in there, is making sure that the items that you choose have enough political support in order for that to balance out so it's the thing in orange, really, right?
Ease of stakeholder.
No, that's something
It's
else. Yeah,
ease
that's
of
something else.
implementation.
It might be in public visibility and community support, but there is for any one of these items, a political calculation, like who's gonna be impacted, who's gonna bear the burden, and sort of what is the political calculation around those items that is gonna impact whether or not the three items that Zia chooses. And obviously, Zia has an opportunity to influence the political calculation, right? But that calculation is also going to go into the select board's consideration of the viability of whatever plan you end up presenting.
Well, I say, every time we think about this, you realize how complicated it is, and because you have, what if something scores really, really high on everything, but costs more than the town wants to spend, or buildings, we talk about all the time, buildings, are something we all understand that is the most important thing, but again, the cost of that is prohibitive.
Right, but that's where the defense of the framework is very, very important, because if it turns out that this is the thing we need to spend the money on, and because it is going to have the greatest impact, then you can build a political case to support that effort.
But it all is, I think really what we're saying here too is that if you two work on a couple, support of different people too, support that both the staff and some of us working on this, because we see it from so many different perspectives. You'll see certain problems probably that we wouldn't see, we may see problems you wouldn't see or whatever. And the real thing is to get to work and get at least not just Verno, but get a half a dozen of these things filled out. Because as you said, we're working while we're planning on this. It's an iterative process, and once we've done that, we'll.
Next thing is this priority framework was designed to prioritize things that were not a financial burden on the town.
Right, that is one of the factors.
Yeah.
But the financial burden of the town is not the only political consideration.
So what more do we need to do on this big agenda?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think at this point, if I can just summarize, what I'm hearing is that, at the next meeting on July 20th, or excuse me, on July 23rd, which means that, actually by July 21st, Rebecca and I will have, updated, narrative as it relates to residential solar, and that will then be used and applied and done at first pass with the prioritization framework for that initiative. We will also have the same for Berto, if there's any other changes that you feel like you need to make as you continue to tinker with it, Alan. I picture you like in your workshop, which is really your laptop, just like, continuing to innovate over there. And then the same for new construction. And then we will do the same for municipal solar. And then at the next meeting, we will have all of those things by July 21st. That then at our meeting on the 23rd, we will talk through all of those and see how is this framework working. We've now applied it to 4 different initiatives. What needs to be changed in terms of weights, scores, multipliers, what is coming out, what's working, what's not, and how complicated was it to use this tool. So for example, if we have to use it for other initiatives, is that possible? And also, so if we use it, if we have to justify how we got to where we did, is it understandable, explainable to all of our stakeholders, elected officials, town administrator, the general public? So that correct?
Correct.
One other-
Except for one. Did I hear the except
I
for
would
one?
recommend that Nick does the municipal solar. He's been leading the charge on it.
Yeah,
I don't think Nick's done anything on municipal solar.
Then
well, he's
Nick and I,
the strongest supporter, as he, I don't know if
he and I,
does he have the data?
yeah, he and I worked on municipal solar, so I'm happy to take a shot at that too.
Okay, sure, that's totally fine. We were,
And what I was gonna say is that even when I thought you were doing that, is it seems to me optional, depending on how much time you have and so on, that you might sort of glance through the list and see if there's some other thing that is either easy or particularly important or something to work on another one, just to see whether you surface any problems there to
on another initiative using the
some
framework.
activity. I mean, I don't know, in the list of 50 things that we have, something else that you think it's likely to be a town focus thing. There's some of the things on the list are to get the community use of that.
Yeah.
Some of the things are like, municipal fleet or, I don't know what, maybe we already have an electric garbage truck.
Yeah,
There might be something else in there. Particularly if Nick and Nick are going to do some work on this solar, that I think, again, you are working on something to see where the use of problems is really important.
yeah, that's why we were, I think after the last meeting, it was gonna do new construction and we were gonna do municipal solar, for that reason. So, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter, but I agree. It would be helpful for staff to utilize the tool and see what questions arise from our perspective.
And I didn't hear you explicitly say it, but are you also by that meeting gonna have this list of 25 or 30 or whatever?
No, so let me, no, but I have an explanation as to what that process looks like. So, if there's nothing else on the initiatives and the framework, as it stands, I'll move into the CARP update, which is going to, touch on that question. Is that
Makes sense, everybody?
Yeah.
All right, next agenda item, go ahead.
okay? All right. So, I just let me pull up a calendar here. So, what we have is some key dates coming up for the climate action plan. So the one of those is what we just talked about with our next VAB meeting to understand and test drive the prioritization framework. We will also do have a first pass at distilling all of the engagement information. So that is engagement information from Public Forum 1, Public Forum 2, the community survey, the interviews that were done with staff as well as the ZIAB members, and the inputs that were done as part of the baseline assessment. So the ZIAB work that happened last year, existing planning documents. So all of that from the baseline and engagement will all be synthesized. And then we will do a first pass at here are the, looking at all of that, the preliminary strategies and goals that will go into the climate action plan. And then that will come for the ZIAB meeting on August 20th. And that will be the time that we look at those initiatives and talk about what's here, what's not here, what's missing. That will also be a meeting that anyone who attended the public forums, we will encourage them to attend that ZIAB meeting as well, so that they can see what's coming out of all of that engagement, and provide feedback on that. So that will be the first pass at looking at that list.
And you're sort of thinking something like a couple dozen?
I honestly, I don't have a number at this point for you, but I would be more comfortable with a more succinct list than a long laundry list. So I think the challenge that we're going to face is, as soon as people see that, people are going to say, I don't see the thing that I want to see in here. Where's my thing? And so then we point back to the framework. And this is how we prioritize.
So what you're saying is that the August 20 meeting, the 8 or so, call it 8, call it 12, whatever that number, that succinct number is, those plus a number of other initiatives will have already been run through the framework to get a score that provides the defense and the reasoning as to why these 8 items are the thing.
Correct. Which is why I'm trying to push us towards having that framework, so that we can try to apply it.
Right, so the step before this is to identify what the list of items is that are going to get plugged into the framework from which you're going to generate the succinct list.
Correct.
And when is that milestone occurring?
Yeah, so, sorry. So that milestone is in progress right now. So what we have is input from Public Forum 1. I'm not going to go into what all that input included, because we already had that at a previous ZIAB meeting, but just a reminder that this was in the Public Forum in end of March 31st. We had 39 attendees representing from 11 different precincts, and we talked about the prioritization criteria. So what are the things that are most important, climate impact, return on investment, those kind of things. And then we also talked about what are some of the initiatives that should be in that plan. And we received input on all of that at Public Forum 1. At Public Forum 2, which happened last month, yes, because it's July. We had 40 attendees from 10 different precincts, and there we said, let's talk about, of those initiatives, what are some of the policies, programs, projects that we will use to achieve these goals. And so that input is part of our summary process thus far. At that public forum, we also had some different exercises for people to do. For those of you that weren't there, this is just a quick summary of that. We had participants were invited to view climate themed artwork that was prepared by students in Rumpel School, from 8th grade students, and then asked people to respond, what were the comments and feedback based off of that. And so a lot of responses around upset and motivated to change, and inspired action for people. We also asked the question, what are your biggest concerns about climate change in Brookline? We asked this question at the first public forum, and we got a lot of folks who sea level rise and coastal flooding was the highest response at the first public forum. And I thought, it's interesting, and said, I think we need to clarify that we're talking about in Brookline. So we've asked this question again. This just reflects what was at public forum too, but we asked this question at numerous community events, including the Springfest celebration that we hosted, as well as Juneteenth and what's the other one? Summer Eats, I believe, as well. So all of those will be collected, but generally, this captures the concerns. And then we asked people, as I said, think about the policy, programs, projects in these different categories. And so this is a high-level summary of what people talked about in their small table discussion. So thinking about solar incentives.
Quick question.
Yeah.
These were the choices given to the people. These were not from.
The concerns on the left were provided, and then people were given poker chips to vote. And they each were given, in this case, 3 chips. And so it was
Fewer chips too.
well, we did use fewer chips because there are 5 categories. We also discovered that people just put 1 in every category. I don't want people to do that. So we were forcing them to prioritize some over others, or they could put all 3 chips in, 1 concern category. So this is, these are the policies, programs, and projects that people talked about in those table discussions. When it came to buildings and energy, they talked about solar incentives, electrification of private properties, and energy efficiency rebates for national systems and community well-being. They talked about tree planting, biodiversity enhancements, and outdoor access. For resilience and adaptation, they talk about green infrastructure, such as rain gardens and Miyawaki forests, as well, which is basically a mini forest, and integration of built and natural systems. For resource conservation, it was about rainwater reuse, municipal composting, and stronger zoning bylaws. And for transportation mobility, it was around bike infrastructure, electric shuttles, and micro mobility options.
And these represent the ones that got the most votes or most interest.
This was the ones that were discussed. These are the ones that were brought up and discussed, based off at the second public forum.
But is there some, if you just take the top category, buildings and energy, were there other things discussed in buildings and energy, and these are the things that got the most interest, or is this just a list of everything that we?
This is not a list of everything, So this is the things that we had the most content on
Okay.
from the discussions that occurred.
Okay.
So then we have the community survey that went out. Overall, we had 517 respondents to that. I will say that as we went through the survey, you'll see that the number dipped down to about 400. So some people started it and didn't finish the survey. But just a quick snapshot, we asked, do you live in Brookline? 92% of the respondents did. We asked people, are they owners or renters? 70% of the respondents were owners. We asked some basic demographic information. So just to say that the majority of the respondents were in the 65 plus category. And the majority of the respondents were white Caucasian, identified as their race. We did have all voting precincts, 17 voting precincts were represented with survey respondents, with the top ones being precinct 6, precinct 5, and precinct 8.
Where are those precincts? Do you know?
6 is around the high school.
Okay.
5 is sort of south of 9, like high school.
Okay.
And precinct 8 is north Brookline,
Okay.
east of Harvard Street.
Okay.
Do you have any sense of how these responses, other town surveys and things, whether that's a good number of responses?
500 is a good number of respondents. I've run several surveys over the last few years, and for a community-wide survey, we are generally hoping to get 300 responses to something like that, which I know sounds very small for a community of 60,000 people, but that is what it is. And so our goal was to try to get 500 to 600 for something of this significance. So not bad. Patty, do you have a question about this?
Thank you. Yes. I was just wondering a couple of things. First of all, I mean, to me, this looks pretty good in terms of age groups. And I'm surprised the number of renters or non-owners is 30%. That seems pretty good. And I'm wondering how, maybe Kathleen or Michael could say how this compares with the, Kathleen, the steering committee.
Planning steering committee.
Yeah. Yeah, how do the result, I mean, the number and the breakdown and all that, how does that compare?
I don't remember the breakdown, but I think the number of responses was something like 800.
800. Thank you.
I don't know offhand, Patty, sorry.
I can find that out, Patty, if you don't have it, Kathleen.
Yeah, I
I
thought
can-
maybe Jacob sent it.
Yeah, I can second it.
And that question actually came up at the select board meeting last night when we were talking about media engagement as to whether there are other ways that we can get out the word surveys
Mhm.
using social media in order to reach different populations.
It's,
But it's a real challenge.
it's really hard. We try to get creative. Well, that's a whole other conversation. So we did ask, so I'm gonna provide you, this is just of the survey. Okay. Of the survey questions we asked, I'm just gonna give you the quantitative responses at a high level. There were qualitative responses as well. We haven't gone through all those and summarized them yet. So that will be part of the next presentation on the summary of the community feedback. But I wanted to at least provide you some snapshots. So as we move into the initiatives and prioritization framework application of those initiatives, you can see some of the data that's coming in from that. So this one, not necessarily initiative, but we did ask generally how important is it to you that the town take action to address climate change? Extremely important was by far the winner, somewhat important, and 31 responses, not at all important.
Okay, now there's more than 400 responses here, so I guess.
We had 517 responses as the survey went on. People stopped answering
Okay.
questions, and so we
Okay,
dropped down.
all right.
So yeah, this one got 515. So this is what was question 6 in the survey around residential and commercial building energy. And so we asked people what were the strategies that they felt that should be prioritized. So we offered develop a new solar array so that all residents participate by default in community solar. We did clarify residents would have the option to opt out, and as you can obviously see, that was the winner, but a close second was institute a fee reduction or fast track incentive for building permits that prioritize energy efficiency and emissions reduction. Then we had adopt a building emissions reduction and disclosure bylaw, or BERDO, that requires large buildings to report and then reduce greenhouse gases. We looked at leveraging bulk purchasing of electric appliances. This is also something that came up in the public forum. Electric heat pumps, water heaters, things like that, so that we could negotiate discounts for residents to implement those in their home. Then require rooftop solar and battery storage for all new construction. Right now we have a fossil fuel free bylaw, but we don't necessarily require that rooftop solar be installed or battery storage be installed. And then we create a municipal revolving fund to support incentives for commercial and residential greenhouse gas reductions. So when you see these, you'll see these on all the questions, other strategies, that's the part that you're not going to see the synopsis of yet, because those are all written in comments that were still synthesized. For municipal buildings and energy, so we divided this up looking at residential and commercial, and then because there was so much here, and then looking at municipal buildings. So these are ones specifically owned and operated by the town. So installing solar on municipal building rooftops. We separated out installing solar canopies on municipal owned parking lots. The two top choices, eliminate fossil fuel usage from existing buildings through building retrofits. require solar and battery storage capabilities in all new municipal construction, invest in a geothermal utility district for town-owned facilities, create a solar plus battery microgrid to generate on-site electricity. We use Town Hall campus as an example, but could be applicable elsewhere. And adopt an embodied carbon reporting bylaw that requires municipal construction projects to report all greenhouse gas associated with the construction.
Question to you, Mike. Do you think there is a value in having some kind of a survey just addressed to select board and the town meeting members? Not this survey, it will be a little bit different survey plan.
I think the value of that survey would be to gauge the political will for a particular
That is,
objective that you had. I am not sure if a survey is the best mechanism.
yeah,
for
because it can
getting that
be
will.
anonymous. That was the only reason I thought about the survey. There are two purposes. One is to gauge the knowledge and understanding of the powers to be, and number two is some trade-offs that the governance is willing to consider.
I think as a political thinker, I'm not sure I would trust the anonymization. You know, if I'm filling out a survey and, you know, it's online or whatever, somebody is gonna know that I said that trees are more important than solar panels, or solar panels are more important than trees. Right? And that's, you know, you have to sort of make that political choice. Some people are more sensitive to that than others, but that's a political choice. So, I mean, I understand the question. You want to get a gauge of the political will.
Or the trade-offs. That's about just the way that's.
Oh, the trade-off, you mean the trade-offs between different options? Or
Yeah,
the trade-offs between doing something and doing nothing?
So one of the questions that was asked by the town, or the respondents, how important is it for the town to tackle climate change? Without any constraints, of course it is.
Yeah, and
extremely
you
important.
also have a self-selected survey population,
exactly.
right, that is primed to answer that question.
So these kind of questions make more sense when you have you present these questions in trade-offs and, right?
You have to give enough context because people in town
Right.
meeting and select board are used to making decisions with all the context provided.
Yeah.
And distilled down in a presentation or lots of backup for people who need it.
Yeah, this will not be the final decision by any means, but just to get a sense for where, so.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have a hard time getting that population to commit to a useful response to Catherine's point. Because if you're not providing the full context, you know, then it's hard. It's just hard to make the trade-offs. And because, I mean, the way that those bodies function is that you present something to them and then they vote yes or no to the question.
Because one of the biggest challenges with climate change, we focus very much on some of the qualitative aspects of climate change, which is very reasonable. But I feel like I think the climate movement has failed a little bit because we don't really talk about the financial risk of climate change.
I agree with you.
Right? If we were to present a challenge and say, hey, your property values in the next 20 years are going to decline by X%, what would you be willing to now do to tackle climate
Right,
change?
and if I were 80 years old and if I were 30 years old,
Right.
obviously there would be different answers.
Yeah, but like really putting it in, because that is what climate change is now doing, right? They are
Oh, I agree with you. I think that's very important.
even coastal flooding. We may not think it impacts Brookline. It does impact Brookline. Our taxes are going to go up. Right? Who's going to fund the walls and the mitigation of flooding in Massachusetts. It's gonna be us. So, anyway,
Well, to the extent that you can financialize
yeah,
the challenge, I mean, absolutely, don't you? And that's that makes things much more concrete for
Exactly.
decision.
Can I interject?
please.
Thank you. To this point, I mean, I was looking at that data. I have a couple of comments, if I may. But I was looking at the data on sea rise and concerns about that, thinking the same thing that Vikram said. I mean, Boston is our economic hub, you know, and if Boston is running into severe economic problems due to climate change, that absolutely affects Brookline and how we live. So there's an incredible movie. I just want to throw this out. It's it's about the seaport, Vikram. Did you see it? And the construction of the seaport. I mean, it's just, you know, something that maybe Ziab can be thinking of is, do we host an event at the Coolidge? See if the Coolidge will agree. Bring this guy. I went to a conference and heard him speak. He is available. I wish I'll try to remember. Inundated. I can't remember the name of but it's about the seaport. And you know, do we start setting the table for the community to really start thinking about just that? So I wanted to just add that, you know, we really should be thinking about bringing the community in and how we do that. But can I just ask a question about this particular slide? Okay, it has an embodied carbon reporting bylaw thing on just municipal construction projects, and the counterparts I've seen from other communities are just new construction, period. So I'm wondering if this option was available for choosing on the residential and commercial buildings in energy part of the exercise. I wasn't able to attend that night. And it just wasn't picked. It didn't get enough votes, or it wasn't even an option. Do you know what I mean? Offered as.
So in this, are you talking about a survey here? Because this is just the,
Is it a question in the survey?
was it a question in the survey? No, I
Oh,
don't.
this is a survey. Yeah, it wasn't not an option in the survey.
No, it's number 3. Adopt a building commission.
Well, that's different. So that's a
Reduction.
burden.
That's different.
Carbon.
Uh,
Yeah, so
I
no,
was just wondering. Yeah, okay, it's a survey. I'm just wondering because it's something that the communities are doing it for all new construction. I was just wondering. But I took the survey. I just don't remember.
One of these sort of precision problems. I mean, Patty, you and I are particularly interested in embodied carbon. So we noticed that. And the first thing that jumps to my mind is there are a lot of people out there that maybe don't even know what embodied carbon is, so they don't recognize.
Yeah, right.
What is the data that we do with what we can? Maybe we'll let you on the next slide.
all right, so then we looked at sustainable transportation and mobility. So the highest responses there were about improving safe walking routes in high density areas and improving bike infrastructure. I don't think that's a big surprise. Obviously, there's a lot of co-benefits with some of these actions, and in particular, those are high priorities for the community at large. So expanding access to EV charging station network in public areas, adopting a zero emission vehicle first policy that prioritizes the electrification of town vehicles, initiate a shared shuttle system for cross-town trips within Brookline to improve micromobility, and expand the Blue Bike network, as well as incentivize low carbon commuting for town of Brookline staff. And then other strategies. For resource conservation and management, capturing and reusing rainwater at municipal buildings for irrigation and non-potable uses to reduce the demand on water supply overall, using rain-friendly plant areas or bioswales to soak up stormwater, reduce flooding along the public right-of-way, a town-wide curbside compost collection program, exploring opportunities to treat and reuse gray water or wastewater from public buildings for landscaping, incentivizing building reuse to deter demolitions and conserve carbon from construction materials, creating a deconstruction and reuse ordinance to reduce waste and emissions by salvaging materials from demolition projects, and adopting a pay-as-you-throw trash program that would charge based off the volume of waste that was dispersed, therefore incentivizing less waste to go to incineration. And then within natural systems, climate adaptation and resilience, prioritizing tree planting. It was the highest respondent by far. And then require, I'm sorry, requiring or incentivizing cool roofs or green roofs for new construction, integrating climate hazard mapping for zoning and capital planning, creating community resilience hubs for locations dedicated to cooling during extreme heat events, constructing microgrids to replace petroleum generators, and instituting a fee-based program where property owners are charged based off of, I actually don't know what the end of that question is. Do you remember, Rebecca? The last one.
And also the one about the microgrids, there's an ellipsis at the end, generators for what?
That's for whenever we have to use backup generators
Emergency
in an emergency.
Okay.
Yeah, emergency generators. Do you mind just rolling water? Oh, yeah. I'll come back to you on that one. Institute things for the last one. And then the piece that I want to go back to here is when we were going through at the public forum and talking about some of these policy programs, projects for discussion. One of the questions that came up was from the respondents, or excuse me, from the participants was, Alexandra, why are you asking us a question about any of these things that aren't buildings and transportation? That's where the majority of our emissions are coming from. Why are we even talking about composting? Why are we even talking about tree planting? Why are we talking about some of these other things? She was they were a little bit saying that, and hypothetically, they weren't really looking for an answer to that, I know, but I think that will be important for us to consider as well as we go through this. If the greenhouse gas inventory is showing us that the greatest source of our emissions are coming from the built environment and transportation, and the greatest source of our emissions are coming even further from the residential and commercial sector, not the town sector, what does that mean as we think about these survey results and the prioritization of the work that we're doing? So I just.
Or was that one person asking that, or it was a general thread?
Well, one person asked that specifically when we were going around doing the exercise, but I will say at the beginning of the was anybody here at the second public forum? You were here. And Michael, the general consensus, or there was a lot of questions and confusion at the beginning when we presented. Here's what we heard at the first public forum, and what we heard at the first public forum was a lot about tree planting, and people in the audience at the second forum said, whoa, that's not going to have the most impact. Why is that the thing that you're talking the most about? And I took a step back and said, well, that's not the thing we're talking the most about. That's the thing that your community, your neighbors talk the most about at the first public forum. It was interesting because while we had about 40 people at each forum, it wasn't the exact same group at both of them. There was certainly some overlap. And so it was interesting that at the second forum, we had, I would say, a different participation, and a group of folks that was saying we really need to be focusing on buildings and transportation, and how are you going to take this feedback and utilize it in the plan, because I disagree with tree planting.
I think, if I recall correctly, in the second forum, there was a slide presentation, right, from the consultants that showed where our greenhouse gas emissions were from.
Mhm.
And I don't remember if that slide presentation happened in the first forum.
It did.
It did.
Mhm.
Okay, so my hypothesis that the second group is primed is not necessarily correct, but I guess it does seem that it is possible that they were in some fashion more attentive to that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably stuck out in their mind more because I kept emphasizing it. And in the second forum, because the second public forum, I was asking them to focus the policies, programs, and projects on residential and commercial. I said, let's not think about municipal, like just think about actions for that sector because of the greenhouse gas. So I think that could have been part of it, but I really think the second thing was we were sharing results at this second forum that we heard at the first, and people who weren't at the first forum were looking at that and thinking that that was what the consultant was sharing as the most important things that we could do. So I think it was a misunderstanding as the information was being presented, that caused people to say, whoa, 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 I don't agree with this. And I point that out just because, again, I think that I told Rebecca, I think earlier today when we met, like, buckle up, we're about to enter like the hardest part of this, which is we have all this information and now to take it and turn it into an actionable plan, knowing that it's not going to look exactly as Vikram wants it to look and Kathleen wants to look and Joe and Bob and Sally and Sue want it to look. Like, it's going to look different and people are going to say you didn't listen to me. They're not going to say that, but people are going to want to see a plan that is reflective of their values.
people are gonna say,
Yeah, I was trying to backtrack this. It was a bad statement to make. Can you pull it back up for me? I'm sorry. So the last one, just to clarify, was that we should institute a fee-based program where property owners are charged based on the amount of impervious surface on their property. So it was about flooding reduction. So I will pause there and say that all of these pieces, public forum 1, public forum 2, the interviews that were conducted with staff and ZIAB, as well as the survey results, are all of the pieces of input that are the initiatives to be prioritized in that plan. So you're not seeing every single one of them here again, because we didn't go through the other strategies. But so there's several dozen others that will pop up through that, because there were some repeat comments in there, and then some of the comments were not applicable. So that okay, all right. I'm gonna just turn on my volume then, just for a second, because otherwise, Patty, can you hear me?
Now I can. Yeah, I lost a minute, maybe.
One more time.
I maybe lost a minute where I wasn't seeing or hearing anything.
Okay, sorry about that. We had the large Zoom screen in town hall just powered off on us suddenly. So we're gonna get you added up there right now. I'm just coming through my laptop.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry about that. All right, so the Sustainability Natural Resources Division update. So we have been working the last couple weeks. This is the royal week because I was out of the office last week. Rebecca and Shelley worked on our reporting for the large building energy reporting ordinance from our requirement from the state. So it was not a super straightforward process, but yeah, so that's every municipality, everyone, not just municipalities, any private or public building over 20,000 square feet in Massachusetts. Correct, yeah. So we had about just under 30 buildings that we were reporting on. Yes, not counting the Marriott Hotel.
There's a lot of there.
Yeah, there's they have I'm laughing because I discovered that in that process when I saw that address. I was talking to Shelley, our deputy director, and I said, no, that's not ours. That's the Marriott. That's not us. We don't have to report on it. And then of course, after some digging, it was like, oh no, you own that property and they're in a very, very long-term lease with you. And I was like, oh, okay. But clarification with the state was that if we don't pay the utility bills, then we don't have to report on it. So we did not, which I was grateful for. So all that to say that that's a new requirement by the state. We were able to get that information, and there's a couple of small outlying buildings, namely that anything that has multiple buildings on a meter needs to be considered a campus. And so Town Hall has a campus, as well as Brookline High School has a campus. And so both of those projects are currently being reviewed by the state to ensure that they can be campuses.
But you have a choice to report something. Is it just a single meter for all of those? Because I thought a campus was just, you had multiple buildings on a parcel and you have the option to report the buildings individually or collectively.
Yes, yeah. So both of those are ones that we're reporting as campuses. Yeah, correct. So a few outstanding pieces there, but I will say that it was a great deal of effort, and I think that it will be interesting to see how the state modifies it. There's a lot of effort for the state as well. It'll be interesting to see if the state modifies that. This was the first year this has ever been done. We'll see what that looks like for the future.
From what I've seen of it, this is going to be a trial and it's going to take multiple years.
That was the impression I got on the call with the state.
Go on the website, it talks about you received a letter from the state. All right. Well, I know at least one big specific example where I have to live where there was no letter from the state. They had the wrong owner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
is this in your condo building?
Well, they had, yeah. Well, rather than being a condo association, which is 250,000 square feet, if it's the owner of an 1,100 square foot condo. Okay. My guess is if he got a letter from the state, he said, "Oh, this junk mail," and threw it out.
Mm-hmm.
We never heard from him. I can only imagine how many instances.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So that the housing authority, Brookline Housing Authority, they were asking some questions about. So it's going to take a while before they even have the right buildings, let alone.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other reporting requirement that we're working to comply with right now as well is part of Brookline being part of the fossil fuel free pilot program as well for the state. So requirement that we're submitting any of the building information on any of the building permits that were filed that triggered that bylaw. And as with many things that we're working through with the division right now, there's, I think, systems that we need to set up to be able to capture that information better. So right now, as you file a building permit through Acela, it's not as if I can run a report through Acela and say who triggered the fossil fuel free bylaw. That's not how the system is set up.
You have to go how much. So one way concern was that, before there was your division, that work would have gotten done. Maybe with the public department, but maybe it's appropriate to do some of it, but I hate to see all kinds of things that other people could do being loaded on you.
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort between building department and myself. I mean, they know the building permit system better than I do. They know Acela better than I do because they work in it every day. I'm still learning it myself. So we are working to modify the building permit so that next year when we go to pull this information and report on it, that it is easier to do that, to comply, so that it is a little bit more straightforward. Because what I have now is a pretty significant data dump that we're trying to sift through and do some quality control on, and make some educated assumptions as to whether or not the bylaw was triggered.
Does all new construction require the
Fossil fuel free?
fossil fuel free?
If it's new construction or a major renovation, which is
So it's all new construction and all major, it's not a choice anymore. It's a
no,
requirement.
correct. It's a requirement. Yeah.
It's not a flag for every building. This is new construction or a major modification.
There is not. That would make things a little bit easier. So we're working on that. Yeah, because that's that will make things easier. So that data assessment and reporting is happening right now, and reporting that to the state all for 2024. And then the Mass CEC grant that we received for up to $500,000 for on-street charging. We had a site visit with their team and their consultant to look at some of the priority locations for siting some of that EV infrastructure. And they are currently working to look at the electrical capacity of those different locations and essentially do an assessment on what really drives up the price of those projects is how much conduit you have to run and how much construction works needs to take place. And so looking at which ones are going to be providing us the most bang for our buck, and we have the capacity within the grid. So we are continuing to request feedback from the community. This was at the end of the climate action survey, which I assume and hope you all took, that we said, if you own an EV, like, can we ask you a few more questions? And so we have a map that's tracking, basically what areas are getting the most interest from people for additional charging. And we're continuing to push that out, even though we've closed the CARP survey. So if you haven't been able to complete that portion of it, let me know, and I can send you the live map as well. And so our plan is that we will have some preliminary sites selected by end of August, and I will share those with ZIAB with the intention that we're moving towards construction this fall for those proposed locations. And it'll be somewhere from 3 to 5 locations for those charging stations. Again, it's going to be the level 2 charging.
7 kilowatts or I think level 2.
Yeah, it's not. I think it's 13 kilowatts. Yeah. And that's where we're at. So thank you.
What about the Mass State grant person that town hall that was hoping to be afforded on?
Yep. So we have in order to so always read the fine print on a grant, folks. There's been a lot more. The application was easy, but the work to get the money has really been challenging. So last night, the select board, thank you, Michael, approved our MOUs and NDAs for that grant. So now that those are signed, we can actually bill for the money to pay the staff person. And we currently have a job description drafted that we're going to get approval to post hopefully soon from HR. And that should be going up here in the next couple of weeks. Once that job posting's live, this is to hire, as a reminder, this is to hire a part-time staff person to serve as an energy advocate in the community. Once that job posting is live, I will definitely be sharing it with all of you and would appreciate you sharing it with your networks. As I've expressed, we wanted that to be a full-time position, got funded for a part-time, so it'll be non-benefited, and it's just always harder to fill those roles, so could use help finding some qualified candidates for that. Thank you. Any other questions? Beautiful. Thank you. So efficient with your voting. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Patty.